Right. So thank you very much. And I just very briefly want to introduce myself. I am currently actually co-vice chair of the London Historic Buildings Trust, there being two of us. And I've been vice chair since 2017. Previously, I was executive director of the Prince's Regeneration Trust, and before that, the divisional partner at a property consultancy, Bidwells, based across the UK. I now, however, am an independent consultant because I managed to pull back work so that I could look after my family and have a modicum of independence. Other activities that I do, I am chair of Emmaus Hertfordshire, which is a homeless charity. And I'm also a member of the Diocese of London Diocesan Advisory Committee. So that keeps me quite busy in my spare time. Today, as Hannah has outlined, I just wanted to talk through establishing a vision and why that is important. Then I will obviously talk through the difference between the vision and mission, which is quite a fine definition, but still quite critical. Aims and objectives, and finally outputs and outcomes, which are also important to understand. And I will talk you through some of the steps in terms of actually how to develop your own vision for your own organizations. So what is visioning? It is obviously the process of articulating your intentions for your building and your heritage. But I think most importantly, the point of having a vision is so that everybody in the organization, when asked, can actually turn around and say the same thing in terms of what they want to see the organization achieving. And it just helps everybody to sing from the same hymn sheet, as it were, and have everybody pulling in the same direction in terms of where you want to take your organization. So developing a vision is hugely important, not just for your organization, but also so that people who want to support your organization can see that you've been through the process of developing a vision and will have confidence that you know what you want to achieve and where you want to get to. In terms of developing a vision, it's important that you don't just think off the top of your head, right, what are we going to do? We need a vision, let's write one. It's very important that when you develop a vision, it is actually shaped by information. So it's shaped by the importance of your heritage. It's shaped by consulting widely so that other people have the opportunity to say what's important to them. You know, in terms of once you've got your vision, then you can then use it as your sort of key starting point for all the other documents that you need to then develop for your project. So from that, you can develop your mission statement, your aims, objectives, and your outcomes, and you can start to build up your project. So how to undertake a vision? Critically, you need to understand why is it important that we're doing this? So, for example, if you have a building, you need to understand what is the heritage significance of that building? Why is it important that it is actually protected and safeguarded? And you need to understand that in terms of the community and within it sits, and also, for example, statutory bodies like potentially Historic England or your local authority. And, you know, without understanding what is the need, so why do I need to reuse this building, but also what is the need in the community and what use can this building be put to, it is very hard to establish a vision. You also then, when you're working through this process, you need to think about who is going to benefit from the project. And if you're going for lottery funding, it is hugely important that you understand who the key members of your community are, and how you're going to engage with them, and how you're going to ask them to become involved, because it's quite tricky sometimes to reach every audience. And so time spent consulting and time spent reaching out at an early stage is very important. And then the final thing that's very important is, assuming you actually do all of this, you really, really have to take documentary evidence of what you've done. So if you've gone out and done a survey, develop a consultation report. If you're having meetings, just keep a note of who you're meeting with and what they've said. And then you can produce this as evidence when you're writing up applications, or even just doing a report of a meeting. But if you don't write it down when you do it, it's very easy just to forget what you've done. So I'd say just keep clear records as you go. So consultation is clearly key. The whole point about reusing a building is, you know, we could convert a building, we could make it look beautiful, but if nobody wants to come inside it and nobody wants to use it, there's simply no point doing that. So we need to make sure that what we do with a building, people want to engage with, and people want to come and visit the space and use the space. So that's the whole point about consulting. And I think you'd be quite surprised sometimes when you do engage and consult, just exactly what the need and demand is out there and what people can achieve and want to achieve. In terms of reaching out, there are many different ways that we can do this. You can put an online survey. The thing about using an online survey is that you have to back it up with a social media campaign. There's no point just popping a survey monkey on your website and then going, you know, expecting people to fill it out. You've got to then publicize it and push it out through whatever means you have, and you can push it out through community partners as well. And that way you'll find that you should hopefully get a couple of hundred people responding. I mean, certainly when I've done a community survey, that's generally the number of people that I get coming back to me. So the more you can publicize it, the more people will respond. You can also do community events. I often advise that if you want people to come into your building and to give you their views and ideas, one of the ways you can do that is by advertising an open day, perhaps with a tour. So people can come in, have a tour of the building, speak to somebody who knows about it, and then at the same time you can then say, hang on a minute, would you please just mind filling out my survey or answering a few questions? And that's a very good way to get people to just come in and engage. And then finally, obviously, they're setting up one-to-one meetings with key leaders, key community groups. Other organizations you can try and target are local businesses, and actually quite often the best way to do that is just to walk in to their shop or their premises and just say, hello, this is me, please can we just have a chat for 5 minutes? If you're a church, you might want to speak to the congregation, and obviously speaking to the local authority is critical, because the HLF will be very keen to see that your local authority is supporting your project, and local schools. And I have to say, consulting with local schools can be really difficult sometimes. It can take a lot of hard work because in my experience, teachers are really quite busy, and they don't tend to have the time to engage. So you have to put quite a lot of effort into trying to just get your local school engaged and on board. So in terms of actually preparing the vision statement, normally you would pull together a group of trustees or key people to sit down and to brainstorm, as simply as that, your vision statement. And the way that I tend to do it is that I ask everybody in the room to take 5 minutes and just to sit down with a piece of with a pen and a piece of paper, and to write down how they would describe what they want to see happening with their building in one sentence. And then what we do is everybody reads out that sentence, and you collectively shape all those sentences into an agreed statement, which is your vision. And that might then be a couple of sentences long. It might be a little bit longer than that. but it's a good idea not to have it too long. So, you know, a couple of sentences is about right. And if it's going to be contentious, then it's an idea to use a facilitator. And I have facilitated a number of groups in terms of developing their vision. Mostly it's not contentious, but sometimes it is. And that way you can just gently get people to just come together and agree how to move forward. So one case study where I've helped a group agree a vision statement was in St. Mary's. And this, in order to help them, because sometimes it can be quite hard for people to think, you know, what does a vision look like? I drafted an example for the PCC to consider. So my example was, encourage more people to visit St. Mary's to enjoy and learn about its history, helping to ensure a sustainable future for the building, providing much needed improved facilities, supporting those most in need in the local community by encouraging volunteering and providing care. Now, you've got to bear in mind, when I drafted this, I didn't know very much about the building and not very much about what the PCC wanted to achieve. And then after a session, they sat down and they agreed this, which actually I think is a rather beautiful vision statement. And it starts, the church is very old and beautiful and has an important history. As a building, it needs to be fit for purpose for the future. We want to build a community of faith whose love for Jesus Christ is manifested in their service of others. We want St. Mary's to be a place where everyone can feel welcome and find a place where they can enjoy the building, share their needs, find support, and be a part of the community. I think it just goes to show how personally you can make a vision and how important it is that everybody comes together to agree it. Here's another example of one. I won't read it out because you will get the presentations after this, so you can go back to these and just pick and choose, get some ideas. The vision, the piece that I liked about this is that Chance Glassworks used to make the glass for lighthouses. And so I liked the imagery of a beacon of hope. So it's just, you know, you need to pull in personal things that mean something to you. And then finally, I put LHBTs in so everybody can have a look and see what our vision and mission is. I also thought it'd be quite useful to put our two vision and mission in so that you can see that the vision is what we're hoping to achieve and the mission is how we think we'll go about that. And it is quite tricky to sort of separate those two out sometimes. And certainly when we were developing our vision versus mission, it took trustees quite a long time to get our heads around what it is we were actually trying to achieve and why. So again, I put those up so you can have them for easy reference in the future. So in terms of just taking a project forward, when you're looking at scoping out a project in the early stages, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was think about what success looks like for your project. So when you're at the start of a project and you've got a building that's in a poor condition, it's important to look to the future, 5-10 years time, whatever, and think, when we've done our project, what will success look like? How will we know we've delivered what we want to achieve? And that's a very good way of sort of setting a starting point and setting an end point. And then the project is just all the steps along the way to help you get there. And setting out your aims and objectives is just one next step in terms of developing that big picture and understanding how you're going to go about it. So again, aims and objectives, they can be quite confusing. What's an aim? What's an objective? And again, a piece of advice I was given is think of a staircase. Your aim is the top of the staircase, so where you want to get to, but your objectives are each little step along the way to get you there. And that again just helps clarify, in my mind at least, what it is I'm trying to achieve. So here, the aim might be to refurbish the listed building to viable new uses. And your objectives then to help you get along the staircase to get to your aim is to fundraise, to create new usable space, to create new jobs on site. I mean, you will have more than that, and you could normally have more than one aim. But nonetheless, these are just some example ones that you might then sit down and think about. Oh, sorry. So inputs, outputs, and outcomes. Hannah asked me to talk about this. Again, this is something that people can find quite confusing, and certainly it needs to be carefully thought through. But if you're looking at lottery funding, it is very important that you think about what these three sort of deliverables or activities are, because even in putting a project inquiry form in or an expression of interest, you'll be asked to set out what your project outcomes are and how you intend to achieve them. So you have to think about that very early on in your project. So inputs versus outcomes. An input is the resource that you put in to your project. So that could be money, it could be time, it could be materials, but it's a tangible input. An output is a snapshot in time. So it is X number of people attend a training course. It is X number of buildings refurbished. An outcome would be much more longer, sort of short, medium, long term. So if you had X number of people attending a training course, an outcome might be Y number of people with improved confidence, or Z number of people with increase in learning, developing skills, having an enjoyable experience. These are outcomes. So it's just very important that when you're trying to identify them, that you don't put your output into your outcome, because again, funders very much want you to know and to separate out the difference. I think here, just one of the quick points is you're going to probably need to find many different funders to support your project. So the best piece of advice I can give you is to work out what your project is and then search for the funders to support that. Don't go out and look for the funding and work out how can I mold my project to try and draw down the funding, because it just means you won't achieve what you're setting out to achieve. Definitely you have to work out what it is we want to achieve and then try and go out and find the funding afterwards. I think it's important just to set out that the National Lottery Heritage Fund has changed its priorities under its 5-year strategic plan for 2021-2022, basically to try and support heritage organisations coming through COVID. So this year in particular, it's very much about the local economy, skills development, well-being, creating better places to live and visit, and improving the resilience of your own organisation. And it's very important to note that the mandatory outcome is a wider range of people involved in heritage. And that is such an important outcome that if you can't demonstrate that, you simply won't secure funding from the lottery. So it's very important that you consider these priorities and work out if they fit with what you're trying to achieve. The likelihood, I think, is that from 2022-2023, that the lottery will go back to looking at its sort of broader strategy, but that may change. We're not out of COVID yet. We don't know how this is going to pan out. But for now, these are current priorities. So some of the things that I've also done when I'm helping community groups start a project and to try and shape their project is by getting them to think about, well, what elements of their project are essential, what do they really fundamentally want to achieve, and what parts are desirable. So therefore, if they don't manage to do it, it doesn't matter. And I think it's quite useful to have a look at your project and to quite often go through a wish list of essential, desirable, because in reality we never have enough money to do everything we want to do. So it's quite helpful that you can kind of have an A and a B list and work that through important as you can. It's also very important at this stage to think about how are you going to evaluate your project, how are you going to measure your outcomes, and if you don't set those sort of measurement indicators in place right at the start, you will miss crucial information that will help you understand sort of distance traveled, how far has your project come. And it's very important, therefore, that you really think about evaluation right at the start, and you start to think about all the tools you might use to measure your outcomes. So then one of the things that I did, again, because I knew that you could have a look at this presentation later, is I just put in some outcomes and indicator outputs under essential, desirable that I'd used for another project. And it just goes to show the thinking of the group as to which outcomes they wanted to focus on, how they might then go about measuring that outcome, and whether it was going to be an essential or a desirable one. So I've just put in here a couple of tables as to what some of these outcomes might be. So, you know, I would have thought we've got to then, if I just pick a couple of them, for example, more business opportunities for local people. At the moment, I would say under the HLF requirements, that would be essential. Community groups have increased skills. Again, these are very important indicators. Actually, safeguarding your heritage is a very important indicator, but it's not necessarily one of the desirable outcomes that the HLF is focusing on at the moment. So I think, sorry, that is a very quick canter through as to vision, mission, aims, objectives, and inputs, outputs, outcomes. So sorry, I know that's probably quite super speedy quick, but hopefully that you can pull back onto the presentation and just pick through any information. And also I'm here now to answer questions if you have any.
Thanks, Rosie.